Hey guys, this video will be all about the basics of Houdini's Mantra. Mantra is a very powerful render engine and is also one of the top renders on the market. We will cover all you need to know when you are just starting with this render engine. In this tutorial, I will show you how you can set up your camera, lights and materials. We will go through the most important render and camera settings. We will cover tools in the render view, how you can render image planes, also known as AOVs, what are and how to use Stylesheets and light bank. I will show you how to render geometry as subdivision surface, and we will also talk about rounded edges feature. This tutorial will be great for you if you just started to learn Mantra and you want to know all the basics. Okay, so let's start by creating some geometry. We can create like a test big head. Let's just disable the shader and we'll create our own material, drag and drop principled shader, drag it onto the big head, and there we have it. Now first thing you might want to create is a camera, and you can do this either by going here in the top right corner and pressing new camera, and it will create a camera from your view, or you can just press tab, start typing in camera and control click, and you'll get the same camera. And now if you start moving, you'll get out of the camera. So if you want to move the view and camera with it, just go to your camera and lock the view. So now you can just position your camera wherever you like. And you can also use these two gizmos, and if you don't see them, just press this button and they'll appear. So you have these gizmos which you can use, and also your camera has another gizmos, and you can switch between them by right clicking on the transform gizmo and switching to, for example, orientation. Well, now in the orientation handle, you can switch it to a focus handle. This is really cool. Like, this is your focal point, which you can see focus distance. So whenever you use like depth of field, the focus will be in this point, and this is your depth of field. So as you can see, it's changing the f-stop. So this is really handy. So from this point on and this point on, it will be blurry. And then you also have a frustum handle, and with this you can change your frustum. And you can also set some clipping, this, and some back clipping if you want to. So that's also really handy. I'm just going to set it back. So this is our camera. Okay, so, and now we'll need some lights. So your lights are up here. You can use either one of them. I'm just going to use an area light, and you can set it up by looking through a light. Just lock it, and now we can position it. Okay. And usually with lights, you don't want to adjust the intensity, you want to adjust the exposure. So if you want to make it brighter, just adjust the exposure. And if you want to turn your light completely off, just set both values to 0. Now it's completely off. And for the color, you can Houdini. I really love the color editor in Houdini. You can adjust, like, here is your normal hue saturation value, RGBs. You can set some predefined values, And now the cool thing, which I really like, is you can have like this analogous colors, complementary colors. It's real great. So you get the opposites or the ideal contrast for your color, and another settings. So you can play with this, change the brightness. You can switch between the old and new one. And for the lights, generally a lot of the time you want to use black body color temperature, so you can set that in here really quickly. You can also pick some colors from the scene, just like that. And another great thing is you can also use colors from a picture, so you can use that. Something happened. Okay. Wow. So my light jumped into the center of the scene. Don't know really why, but easy fix. You can reposition it. And in here you can change the light type. You can switch it to line light or disc light. You can also change the size of your lights. For example, let's go back to the grid light. Change the size. And if you're dealing with like large exterior scenes, I really love the distant light. You can also use the sun, but oh yeah, okay. So this parameter is really great, because if you don't have any angle, you'll get just some straight shadows. And if you use an angle, your shadows will be a little bit blurred. I can show you later. So let's just go back to the disk light. Another interesting tool is the light bank. You can find it in the data tree tab and change it to light bank. And now you see we have all the lights listed in this tab. And first of all, let me get rid of this origin gnome, and you can find it in the guides tab and uncheck origin gnome. We can turn off the grid as well. And now, for example, I can select my light, rename it, call it like main light. This will be our rim light, and this will be our fill light. And now I can select each ones I want. Can change the exposure, or I can select just the main light and the fill light, change the color, for example, and basically like change any parameters I want. Some of them I can even do change in here. Change the light type, and it's a really handy tool to let you organize and set up your lights really fast. So you can also turn specific lights off, and you can just solo one light. This is really handy if you want to just debug your lighting. Do you render your scene? So first let me just set this to something more nice, and now you can go to the render view, and these are your objects, and for rendering you'll use the out network, and currently you can see we have no like rendering ROP in here, no Mantra ROP. But don't worry, if you click render, it will create one automatically, or you can just create it by yourself. And here you have it. So I'm gonna press G, so I'll frame the view, and here's our render. Now a nice trick is to press Alt and square bracket to divide your view. You can change it to scene view, and now you'll see your scene. And as you can see, we are rendering from render operator camera, and that camera is this one. So it's currently set to the camera 1. You can also switch it in here. You can have some different views, and also, yeah, so second scene view. Let's just refresh it. This is a view, but I'm gonna switch it to a camera and lock it, so whenever I change it updates. And now also I'm gonna switch my so these are your render settings. Now let's go through the most important options. So in here you can set up your camera. If you want to render an animation, just pause it. If you want to render an animation, you can set it in here. Now, a lot of the time when I'm just setting up the render, I use override camera resolution. So if I'm going to render now, you'll see my resolution is doubled and it's much more faster. The scene renders much more faster, but I have a lower resolution. But in the end I can just turn it off and get the final render. Now for images, this is where your images will be saved. So it will be saved like in your HIP project. You can set it to any path you want, but the most important thing is, if you're rendering an image sequence or an animation, don't forget to put this in your like file name. So you can have something like big dollar big capital F F4. And what this means, it adds a frame number to your picture. If you wouldn't have it, if you would have something like this, it would only overwrite your one picture, so you lose all the previous frames. So don't forget to put it in here. And what this means is this part adds the frame of the current frame you're rendering, and the number 4 is just a padding. So you'll get something like pick 0, 0, 3 zeros, 1, and then 2, and so on. So this is really important to set up if you're rendering an image sequence. Now, for also an important thing, like here you can find your in image planes. In Arnold you would call it an AOV. So if you want some extra passes for compositing, you can set it up in here, and then you'll see it in here. Not much showing up in these ones because we have a really simple lighting, but yeah, you can see them in here. So these are your passes. Okay, so another important tab is the render tab. Here you can switch between your different rendering engines. You can allow and disable depth of fields and motion blurs. So the only thing, if you want a motion blur, is just turn off this and you'll get a motion blur. But you need to have an animated object, of course. And in here, if you feel like your render is noisy, you can adjust pixel samples and different parts of your render. So it's all in here. And now we have the limits. So if you want more reflection limits or more diffuse limits, you can set it up in here. Okay, moving on. So this is also an important tab. Here you can put in like objects you want to render, which lights you want to render, and I can show you real quickly. And this is the part where I will also introduce you to let me just stop the render first. This is also where I will introduce you to bundles, which you can find over here. But first let's create some new objects. For example, a box. And now let's create another test geometry, for example, a rubber toy. Okay, and we'll create some bundles. First one will be new bundle, and the first one will be toy with box, and we'll add the toy and the box into the bundle. So it's here, rubber toy, and here's our box. You can just drag and drop it in, and then we can add another bundle, which could be a pig. So we'll drag and drop it in here. So here is your bundles. And now if we go back to the render tab, and we'll go to our render settings, and so this asterisk means currently we're rendering everything in the scene. But if I want to limit it to a bundle, I can just type in my, well, not much will change, of course. I'll have to choose Windows, bundles, bundle list. So I have to change it to this bundle. And now if I render, I should see this. Okay, not this, not candidate objects, but okay, so this didn't work, but we can create a bundle in here. Big bundle, just create it, and we can just select this, accept bundle. Oh no, I might know what's wrong. Yeah, okay, so the issue was that you have to put an at before your bundle, so it knows it's a bundle. So pick and toy with box. So yeah, now it works. So yeah, this is the important thing. Put an at before your bundle name, and now you can see we are just rendering the bundles we've set up. So this is also really handy. Okay, so I believe these are the most important settings you'll need for start. And scripts, yeah, I don't use these too much. And if you want to render your images to disk, just press render to disk. So easy as that. Also, what you can do is right click on the image and click save frame. And now you can save your frame as any image file format. And it doesn't matter if the render is finished or not. And now for the camera settings, you will have them in here. These are the transforms. Here you can set, I don't know, different render properties. I also don't use these too much. This is really here you have your resolution. You can also use some presets. See, we're rendering at half. Alright, so this is the resolution. You can control your aspect ratio, and this is also really handy. Just change my view back, and this is also really handy that you can change the icon scale. So if you have a really large scene, you can change the scale. Just do it in here. I was probably changing the wrong camera. Anyway, so you can do it in here. Yeah, I was changing the scene view camera. Okay, so let me just go to this camera, and now if I change it, it works. Here we have also the and by the way, settings from whenever you choose either this option, or you just select your camera, select your camera in here, it's identical, so don't worry about that. And we have the focal length, aperture, near far clipping. You can also put in some background image, so it will render. And you'll have some pictures that ship with Houdini. So if you go to your installation directory, to Houdini picture, here you have some pictures that ship with Houdini, and you can show the images if you. It's really good, so you know what you're selecting. So I don't know, we can change something like this to have a background, and yeah, enable background image. So now if we'll render, we should see that image in the background. So, and yeah, let me change it to something else. This looks a little bit distracting. Start page background, why not? So yeah, this looks really nice. So let's just hop in back to our camera, adjust it a little bit. I can pause the render for a while. So there we go. Okay, and now let's talk a little bit about your render view and all the controls that are in it. So let me just minimize this. I can just put it like this. Or you know what, I'll just keep a little window so I can force it to re-render. So you'll start with something like this. So if you want to start a render, just hit render, your scene will be generated, you'll get your elapsed time, your estimated time, and at the end you'll get your render time, which will be in a second. So it took 17 seconds. Now if you want to cancel your render, just press this big red button, and if you just want to pause the render, do some changes, you can do like this. And if your changes aren't updating, you can press this refresh, or alternatively double click on the render. Not double click, just simple click on the render. So here you have your settings, and this is an interesting feature. When you're rendering and you're setting up your materials, let's just select our big head, and here are our materials. We can jump to it, and you're changing, for example, the color. Well, let me just pause it. So you're changing the color to something like this, and basically just setting up something in your shader. When you have this option turned off, it's really handy, because you'll see like a progressive render. If you turn it off, you'll get the final render. So you'll see you have to wait for the rest of the image to appear. But this option is good to have it turned off if you're rendering the final image, because it's a bit faster. Because with preview, it first has to render this pass, then another pass, and another one. So it has to render more. So it's good if you're rendering the final image, just to have it turned off. It's a little bit faster. And also, when you're setting up your materials, you can also click to force the render. Let me just pause it. Let's just change to something bigger so it's slower. And if you're rendering, you can click on the image, and it will force the buckets to concentrate around your cursor. So whenever you're interested in some part, you can just clean it up with click, hold it down. Also, you can use a render region. So you'll do it by holding the shift and left clicking and dragging over the image, and now it will render only in this region. So whatever changes you do, it will render only on this region. So that's also really handy. And if you want to disable this render region, just shift click somewhere outside the image, and there it is. Also, if you sometimes zoom in or out and you want to frame your view, you can press Shift H to fit it, I think vertically, not sure, but it will fit your image into the view. And also you can press G, and this will zoom your view 1:1, so you should see 1:1 scale. Also, you have this kind of controls in here, and they're usually hidden with this within this line. So you can press this line, and your controls will appear. And here are your So it was actually it was fit to viewport. Okay, so that is it. So you can fit to viewport, home it, get some informations about your image. And also in here you have this relighting buffer. So if you're doing some changes, I believe, like changing the light intensity or the color, you can have it on and it should render faster. So we can try that. Let's just change the intensity, the exposure. So to be honest, I don't use it that much, but you might find it interesting in some cases. I believe it's pretty good when you're changing colors of your material. I don't know, it's pretty quick, so you can use this option. And also these settings are important. You can if you're dealing with a heavy scene, or you just don't want as many updates, you can change this to a higher value. So your viewport or your changes won't update that fast. So you'll get less response, but more stable render when you're doing changes. And you can also set this to something different. It's in seconds, by the way. And so whenever you change a parameter, it will take like 2 seconds until it updates. So yeah, you can still fiddle around. Okay, this color. No, it takes 2 seconds. If you set it to something different, I believe the default is something like 0.1. So you'll get much more faster responses. That depends also how fast your machine is. Okay, so next we have some controls over here. You can use this zoom feature, which will show you all the details about your pixels, and some rulers and other extra options, display settings. So you can use this. And in here we have another set of important options. So if you want to view your transparency, you can do it by clicking in here. Let me just turn off the ruler. And if you're gonna switch back to color, just press this. You can isolate your color channels. And also you have a shortcut for it, like A is for alpha, C is for color. So you can do it in here. You can adjust your brightness of the image, reset it by clicking in here. I'm just gonna pause the render. You can adjust brightness, contrast, saturation, and this is your gamma. But I think if you want to see the exact output, like you will see when you save a JPEG or something, you should go to Open Color IO and set it to sRGB, and this is how you will see your image when you save it. So I tend to use this. And also another thing is, here are your snapshots. you can make a snapshot to compare your renders. So let me just unpause it. Let's just change the color of our head. Okay, and let's just wait for a second until it renders a bit. And now we can make another snapshot, and now just compare these two. Make another variation. So let's set it back to something like 1 and 0.5. These settings work for me. So yeah, with this you can compare your renders. Okay, now and let's talk a little bit about style sheets. So what are style sheets and where you can find them? You can find them if you go into the data tree tab, which is here, and you can change the material style sheets. And what style sheets are basically overrides of materials for your objects. So first of all, let's just set up our view a little bit. New camera. Just pause the render. So let's go to our camera. And like this, for example. And now let's make two more materials. This one we'll call this one the oh my goodness, where do I change your name? So let's call it the red shader. Now let's go back to material palette. So let's call this blue, and this one will be green. And let's make the blue material blue and the green material green. Now, and let's create a global override, so which will override all our objects to the green shader. So let's just create a new style sheet. We can call it green look. Let's put a description, new style sheet. So we create our style. Now this is like a group for all the other styles. You could have like, I don't know, different materials for different targets. So this is like a group for all the materials. At first this was a little bit confusing to me, but in the end it's really simple. And now you'll make a specific style, and within this style you have to set a target for which style it is made. So you'll make a target, and actually even better is you can set target objects from your viewport selection, or you can set specific components. So let's just do the target objects, and I want to pick the big head, and now press enter. So here's our target, and so we specified our style, we specified our target, and now we'll have to tell the style like what overrides do I want to make. So I'll just right click and add override, and I want to set a material, and I want to set the material to our green shader. And now if I render, you'll see that the pig head will change to the green material, even if at the pig head we have the red material. This override makes it green. And if we go to our renderer and we would disable this bundle restriction, now we should render all the objects in our scene, and you'll see only the pig is green because we specified our target to be this object. You can also mute the overrides, so you'll have, I need to refresh it. So just pause it and hit render again. And now there shouldn't be any overrides in our image. So renders back by the red shader we assigned. So, but if we delete the target, which is our pig head currently, it should overwrite all the objects in the scene. So let's try to do that. Let's delete the condition, and now we have to regenerate the scene. And now, since it doesn't have a specific target, so maybe this wasn't a smart thing to do. Okay, for some reason my style sheet is not working, but if you look at the scene view, you can see it's applying. Not really sure why this is happening. So if you want to override by material all the objects, you have to do it, unfortunately, by hand for now. Maybe there's a way, but I don't know about it yet. So just pick one. Just create a new target. So select target object from your selection. 1, 2, 3. There you go. And now if we go to render view, we should see all our objects turn green. Now, and if you want to apply an override to just some specific part of your model, you can do it with groups and locally. So I'll just turn all this style off, so we'll get back to our default materials. And let's say we want to override the nose with some green color. So you can do it if you go to your geometry again. We can add a style sheet parameter. Also, if you have some groups already set up, you can use this, create style sheet from existing overrides, and it will create your overrides, and you can assign new materials to them or whatever you like. But now we're gonna do it just by hand. So add a style sheet parameter, add a style, you can call it green those. Let's add a target from viewport selection. For example, this. Or if you have some groups ready, you can use some groups. Now we'll add an override, and the override will be a set material, and set it to the green material. You can see in the viewport our nose is green. So if you go to the render view and hit render, change the camera resolution. So now you'll see we overrided the material of the nose. You can turn it off. Re-render. And there it is. Now, and another important thing is that when you go to your render operator, we're rendering with Mantra 1. So you can set which style sheets you want to use, and you can set it in the rendering and render tab. So declare style sheets is that you want to declare all the style sheets, so you don't have to change this. But this line says that it's going to use all the style sheets, and style sheets work like this. The bottom ones, let's just duplicate one, copy and paste. So the bottom one will override the top one, and these targets will be overwritten by the global ones. And let's say you want to use just some specific style sheets, so you can go, but I think this works just for the global style sheets. So let's make a blue look. Let's turn both of them on, and with the style we set the material override to the blue, and I think I have to add my target objects. This. And also for the green, three. Now, and if we go back to the render view and hit render, our bottom look should override the top one. It's not visible in the viewport, but you can see it works like this. So, and let's say you have multiple looks and you just want to use some specific one. So you can go to your render wrap and just delete this and apply the one you want. It's a green look. So now if I hit render, I should see only the green look style. Okay, so that's the basics of style sheets. Now I'll put some links into the description. Houdini has a really great tutorials on this topic, so if you're interested in this, I recommend you to watch them. And another thing you need to know when rendering is how you render your object as a subdivision. So let me just disable all these looks. Let's just control middle mouse button to revert it to defaults. And let's go to our scene view and position the camera to this cube. Now currently you see the cube has no subdivisions. So if you want to have it visible in the viewport, you can do it like this, but I'm pretty sure it won't. Just to be sure, let's apply some material, for example the blue one, and let's hit render. I'm pretty sure it won't render as a subdivision. Yeah, so this is just for the display, and if you want to render it subdividable, you just hit this render plug on the subdivision. Here you have subdiv quality, and now you'll see if I change the axis divisions, so you get this rounded cube. And also Houdini's principal shader has one interesting feature, which is called like round edges, and I can show you what it does now. Let's create just a new shader. Let's just apply it to the cube. And let's go back to our objects, to this, and now you see we have this basic cube, and I can change the divisions to the default. Should be 2 by 2 by 2. And let's just disable the subdivision. And now if you would want to have like a beveled edge, you would either have to bevel them in geometry, or you can do it with a shader, and it's very simple. Let me just pause the render. You can just go to the shader, go to the bump and normals, and activate this feature. And now when we render our cube, it will have rounded edges. So this is really nice, because now you don't have to model all these tiny bevels. We can make it a bit smaller so it's better to see. So this is a really great feature. But notice that the silhouette or the shape of the cube hasn't changed, so you still have sharp corners. It's just a normal trick. So it looks like it's rounded, but in fact it's just shading. And also a great thing is that it rounds like rounds edges of the connecting geometry. Maybe it's better if I just show it. So let's just disable this background. Let's go to camera. Maybe we'll disable. Okay, we shouldn't see it now. And let's just create some tube. Keep the ends, get smaller, and position it somewhere in the center. And so now, as you can see, my tube is just positioned in the middle of the cube. It's not connected or anything. And this won't work until it's part of one object. So I'll just get the box and the tube, and I'll merge them, combine them together. So now they're a single object, but still, as you can see, it's a bit hard to see with this background on. Background image. So it's not Boolean or anything, or cut it. But now if I go to the render view, and since we have this, okay, so we have to set our material. But now if we have this rounded edge radius turned on, let me just minimize this, and I hit render, you'll see that it will bevel the connecting geometry, like where those two objects meet. And you can set it in here, whether you want just the concave or the convex shapes. And you see, like now we get this really nice beveled edge, and we didn't have to connect anything. So let me just make a snapshot and turn the feature off. And now you'll see it's just really sharp. So turn off. And we have a really nice geometry, and we didn't have to model anything complicated. So this is a really great feature of the principled shader. And let's just talk a little bit about the materials. For this, I'm gonna, let me just pause the render. For this, I'm gonna use this big head for demonstrations. So materials in Houdini are really simple. Generally, you'll find with a principled shader, and it can reproduce all different looks of materials. Here you have handy presets, and if you want to change your material to the preset, don't worry, you can just quickly do it in here. And one thing I want to show you is what I really like is that the preview and the render match really good. So if I go to the render view, and I'll switch here this to the scene view. And let me just disable the background image. And now if I hit render, you'll see that what you see in the viewport really closely matches to what you get in the final render. So this is really great. Let's just go a little bit big shader. And in here are your basic parameters, your base color. You can control the roughness of your materials, anisotropy, reflection, metalness. It's really easy to turn material to metallic or non-metallic. You just slide the metallic slider, and there you have it. Let's go for some clay shader. As you can see, it's really closely matches to what you see in the final render, and you have all these different presets. So transparency. Now if you want to create glass-like objects, do it with transparency. Don't use the opacity, because the opacity will do what it says. It just make it more invisible. whereas with transparency you get all the refractions and everything that you need to make a good glass material. Also you have this subsurface scattering parameters. This is to simulate like the cloth microfibers. And there's also, Houdini has also a really good in-depth tutorial on this. So if you're interested in all the material parameters, I recommend you to watch it. And you have a pretty good presets in here. And one thing that I also really love is the viewport displacement. So now if you look at this material, and you'll go to the shader and the displacement, you can adjust the size of the displacement directly in your viewport. So you can do it in here, and this is really cool. You see it directly in your viewport. And don't worry about spaces like this. In the final render it will be closed. Like you see these spaces, but if you go to the final render, you'll see it's closed. It's just for the viewport. Just render this. And you can turn it on and off with this checkbox, and as you can see, there's no hole. Or is there? Yeah, I believe it's closed. Okay guys, so this is it. This is all you need to know when you're starting rendering with Houdini's Mantra. We went through all the basic stuff you need to know. So have fun rendering, hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and see you next time.